It's the Aldridges.
Hey, hello.
How's it going?
Going
Good.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, can't complain too much.
Good,
Only a
good.
little bit.
It's all right. You got to complain a little bit. You got to know the bitter from the sweet a little bit. And what good is it just knowing if you don't compare and contrast from time to time? So
Thank you. That's
there you
good.
go. See?
You
And
just
that's how I've stayed married this
I
long.
did years of training on my part.
Years and years. Yeah, that sort of thing there doesn't come without many, many nights realizing that you don't have to say everything that comes into your head. So, um,
I haven't learned that yet,
no,
Dave.
no, well, look, all I've done is learn to control it, right? It's not so much about controlling it as it is aiming it. So,
There you go. I like that.
but anyway, everything's going good out there in South Dakota?
Sure is.
Yep,
Sounds like it. You guys got big stuff on the horizon.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this. What do you got going?
Who wants to jump right in there? I'm learning. I'm gonna control it. Therese, why don't you tell them what's up?
Well, after many years of working towards it, we are finally ready to begin our YouTube channel. So,
Right back into the public spotlight.
yes,
Yep.
Whew.
Scary.
it
Yeah.
always is. It
It's
always,
good. You guys are going to do great. So, what's the channel going to primarily focus on?
I think the channel is going to be focused on a couple of things, our family life, but aspects of our family life. So our homesteading elements,
Mhm.
the fact that we are a polygamous family, we'll talk a lot about that because there's always such interest there.
Yeah.
And, gardening, scything,
Home,
horse training, homesteading,
homeschooling.
homeschooling,
Yeah,
cooking.
just a little bit of everything. Just
So
kind of
this so this is going to be a more in-depth look than what you had last time, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I'd say so.
A lot of the stuff that we hoped to be able to cover before, but now we can. This will give us a little bit, a lot, actually, not just a little bit, but a lot of creative content that we had hoped we could do.
Yeah.
Right.
Being on working with a production company and doing reality TV, there's only so much you can say. They have their agendas and the story they're telling. And so
Right.
ultimately they're the storytellers. And this time we get to be the storytellers and share the things that are on our minds and kind of direct things from our own perspective. And I'm looking forward to that element of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, and the nice thing about YouTube and those sorts of social media apps is that you can reveal as much or as little as you want, right? There, like last time, um, and not that it was a bad thing, but there was this very specific goal in mind with that channel, right? With that program, right? Which was it was about you guys in your search for another wife, right? And so the ability to tell the story of what you guys are really all about was probably hampered, I would imagine, a little bit because they've got to then focus on the rest of the folks in the program. And you only got so much time for an episode by the time you take out commercials and that sort of thing that you're really left just to do that.
Right. And their aim was to show aspects of courtship, which is very interesting, but it's only one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
When you polygamous family, courtship is only one element. There's so much about the relationship dynamics of the existing family and how they function and how they make things work.
Yeah.
Right. Right. No, I could see that. And so yeah, that's exciting that they're gonna get like an upfront view on what you guys got going.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true, Dave.
So have you thought about some of the challenges you guys are gonna I mean, what's some of the things that spook you about giving people that much opportunity to see your family? Have you thought about that at all?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those deals. I mean, we did before and we've been public, so we've already entered that arena. Um, but to continue it is kind of spooky. But I think that there's a lot of goodness in sharing family life. And we had so many people reach out to us before from all over the world and just thank us for sharing our family with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it pays off. It's kind of similar to doing missionary work, in it
Mhm.
back in the days in the church.
Absolutely.
Kind of scary to go out there, but it was a great experience. And you get up every day and go out and meet people, and the people that you do meet, it just makes it wonderful, a good experience.
Yeah, that's been the thing that surprised me the most, even with the podcast, right? And don't get me wrong, I get my share of hate mail for sure, but by and large, when I encounter someone who knows the podcast or whatever, even if they're not Mormon of any stripe, there tends to be like, hey, I appreciate this because I got to see the why, right? And again, because of the time restraints, I don't think you guys probably had a chance to really talk about your why, right? Why are you doing this? Have you guys thought about how you're going to tell that a little bit? Because the religion is
I,
a big part of why we do this, right? I mean, it's not the only part, but it is a part that deserves to be addressed, right?
for sure.
Definitely.
I think part of what makes doing what we're doing scary, as it would to anybody, is that we are exposing ourselves to the public eye, to all the criticisms that come with that. But thankfully, we've experienced people's gratitude and actually gotten feedback on how that's changed their life for the better. And so we get to see that it's worth it.
Got
And that's part of our why, to share what we have, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ, and this family that we have that is, a plural family, and there's beautiful elements to that. That's why it's part of the gospel. And so we get to share that with people and combating the misconceptions that are out there. I mean, we all know there are just horror story after horror story in the news about mistreatment, the Warren Jeffs group and all that kind of stuff that is awful. But that's not everybody. That's probably a significant minority.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to show people, look, this family is good, wholesome, and people who live this way can be great people. And this is a beautiful way of life. So I think that's part of our why. Perhaps you
Yeah.
guys have a different perspective as
No,
well.
I was going to say almost the same thing. That part of our why is to show people that these negative stereotypes that they've all associate with polygamy, that's the minority. And really it's very little to do with polygamy and more to do with the evil people who are using polygamy to further their own negative evil agenda. You get people like Warren Jeffs in all types of lifestyles. It's not just polygamy, but that seems to be the only element of no, I figure out how to say this. People tend to lump these things together, and it's just not accurate.
Right.
So yeah.
No, I was just in a meeting, a church meeting here a couple weeks ago, and I remember we were discussing some things, and the topic of Warren Jeffs came up, and it was, in regards to, how it was we were going to make a positive impact, right? And the thing that I had to tell them, right, and I think they knew
The Alldredge family.
instinctively.
Husband, Jeff.
Whoops. The thing that you have to understand is that we're all kind of in that boat now, right? Whether we like it or not, because of the way the media painted things, we now have to do some repair, right? Because let's face it, if any of us were on the outside looking in, we'd have been like, and we weren't already living this lifestyle or had these feelings or done our homework or what have you, we would have been like, no, keep that as far away from me as we can, right?
Right. It's polygamy is what they're showing, then that is awful.
Yep.
They're different things.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And so I feel like that what you're doing is sorely needed from the standpoint not only of addressing people who are just interested, but doing that repair work, right? Because we have to rebuild the bridges. And look, I want to say it's not fair, right? But it is the reality. We have to be the ones to repair the bridge that Warren managed to burn down. And it's going to take some work on our part and some uncomfortability. So I really do applaud you guys for taking this step. It's huge. Um, oh, what were you gonna say? I could tell you were gonna say something there.
Me,
Yeah.
probably. Always gonna say something. Always. No, my thoughts were when we were originally approached to go on the TV show and become public, it was really scary because all of these, the realities of being in the public is just there. But that's part of why we decided to do it, because the opportunity came to us. We
Right.
were approached, and so it wasn't something we were seeking for. It kind of just fell in our lap. And after a great deal of prayerful consideration, we decided to do it because it was a great opportunity for us to stand up and do something positive.
Mm,
And I don't think any of us felt at the end of the day like we could turn that down. It was kind of almost like a responsibility that came. And it was like, all right, well, we have this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
gotcha. I'm gonna ask another question here, and that is, who had the idea first to do this?
The YouTube channel
Yeah.
wasn't me.
I think
Probably.
over the years we've talked about it. I don't remember how it
When we
originally.
first moved here, we actually bought a lot of the equipment in anticipation of being able to create our own content. We've just never the timing hasn't been right. Been busy, and it's one of those things that you put off unless you can or unless you force your way. It's just hard.
Hmm.
Uh, and so the timing is just right now, and
I
it's
think,
time to do it.
yeah, I think it's kind of, you were a big driver in that because you got that missionary spirit. You want to get out there and, you know, share and talk.
Yep.
And I think, Sharis, you've always been pretty game for that as well. I'm probably the most hesitant. I would love to just live in a little like hermit-like state and
No, she wouldn't. She needs people too
oh, that's
much.
probably true.
Awesome. Let's take a look at the video real quick. We'll scope out like the first 90 seconds or something, and then we'll come back here because I want to give people a chance to look at this. So give me just 1 second here. Hi, everybody. We're the Aldridge family. I'm Vanessa, and this is my husband, Jeff, and this is his other wife, Sharis. Hello. We're a polygamous family living in the Black Hills of South Dakota. For those of you who may be meeting us for the first time, we want to tell you a little bit about ourselves and introduce you to our family. Jeff and I have been married for over 17 years and have 3 children, Dane, Zara, and Sebastian.
I was raised in a polygamous family with 2 moms of my own and decided in my teen years that I wanted to be a sister wife. Jeff and I have been married for 16 years and have 5 children, Daniel, Dalinar, Misty, Serenity, and Chloe.
I was born and raised in the mainstream Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, which abandoned the practice of polygamy 135 years ago. I loved the church. In fact, if you had told me in my younger years that I was going to be a polygamist, I'd have thought you were crazy. However, through many remarkable experiences, I came to understand that God had something different in store for my life. He led me to these 2 ladies, and we've had some amazing adventures in the years we've been together. We're excited, as this channel is going to give us the chance to answer some of the questions we haven't been able to answer before.
That's awesome. Okay, so I got a couple questions there as we've reviewed that a little bit. First off, kids are going to be a little more involved, it looks like, this time around.
I think so, yeah.
Have you talked to them about that?
Yeah, most of them are very excited. You know, the older ones as they get older are like, but
Right.
that, we're not certainly not going to force any of them to do anything they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The younger ones are pretty darn excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, the younger ones tend to do that. The older ones, like I took one of my older kids with me once when I had a conference I had to speak at. And it was, a gospel related conference. And I remember he just looked so uncomfortable, the poor kid, right? And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And we talked a little bit and on the way home, and he was good. I think it boils down to once your kids get to a certain age, like they want you to drop them off like a block before they get to school, right? I mean, they just get to that point where mom and dad just aren't cool anymore. And so I think there's probably some of that at play, but I'm sure once it takes off, they'll probably change it up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, I,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say that happened to me when my first child was in kindergarten, Dave. And on the after about 3 days of driving her to school, she started asking to be let off a block or two away. And I realized it was probably a combination of the truck I had bought for like $150 and just me. And so kids probably said something, but she was just embarrassed to be seen in that truck with her dad on the way to school as a kindergartner.
All right, do
And
we got time for a side story?
Sure.
do it.
All right. So speaking of embarrassing your kids, I had a daughter who was a good girl. I mean, didn't test me at all. But there was one time that she was kind of getting in with a group of friends that me and her mom didn't necessarily approve of, right? And so one night, it was a Saturday night, and usually by the time about 8 o'clock rolls around, I'm like, okay, you're done on a Saturday night because we got to be ready for church in the morning and that sort of thing. And she comes to me and she says, "Hey, Dad, I want to go shopping with my friends at the mall." And I'm like, "Well, it's like it's like 8 o'clock. There's nothing good's going to happen out there. Why don't you shut it down? And it's a 3-day weekend. I'll let you go Monday for as long as you want, and I'll even fund the trip, right?" So we're gathering everybody up for family prayer, and my daughter's not there. I'm like, "Well, where is she?" So getting downstairs to her room, and the window's open, and she's nowhere to be found. So I thought long and hard about how I was going to take care of this problem, right? I know where she's at, and I have this idea. And my wife, one year, as kind of a gag gift for Father's Day, got me these flannel pajama bottoms that had SpongeBob on them. And then I took one of my wife's tightest fitting shirts I can. Now I'm a individual of I'm robust. We'll just put it like that. I've developed a bit of table muscle, and so I put on the tightest form fitting shirt that I can find. I have these like bare paw slippers I put on, and I go to the mall. And I'm like, I'll just get her, right? So I go walk into the mall, and I find my daughter, and she's shopping, and she's facing away from me. And I start walking up, and her friends are facing me, and their eyes get about that big. I mean, they're the size of silver dollars. And she's just picking out clothes, talking to her friends. And I just said, "What, dog? You left without me? I can hang. I'm cool, yo." And she turned around and she looked me up and down, and she immediately just started hauling for the door. Right. And I'm like, "Wait, where are you going? I'm not done. There's stuff I want to look at. We'll go to the food court. I got no problems." And she's like, "Dad, how can you do this?" I'm like, "Look, I've been married for the better part of 20 years at this point. I'm trying to impress nobody." Now, from that point on, public embarrassment I have found is by far, especially when the friends are involved, by far the most effective way of discipline to your teenagers. Because she never did it again.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. But no, the older ones will come around once they see it take off. Okay,
You were
so
like my new hero. That's awesome.
no, I don't think she thought I was her hero in that moment. And even my wife was like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "To get
But
your daughter." She's like, "You're not going like that." And I'm like, "I think I look good." And then just walked out the door and went and got her. But yeah, no, it was good. The other part, you talked in there a little bit. I can't remember who it was, but said something about we're looking forward to showing you um or answering some of the questions you have. What kind of questions do you think are going to come your way?
All of them.
yeah, we get a lot. A lot of people just want to know how in the world a polygamous family works. Um, and when you live it, it's just you take it for granted. It's just normal life. But when you look at it from the outsider's perspective, they're just like, how do you do this? They ask us a lot about jealousy. That's a really common question for the
Yeah.
women. And
Today,
Kind of.
Dave, I had a phone call from my nephew who runs a company, and he started out the conversation with, "Hey, Uncle Jeff, I got a question for you." I'm like, "All right, what is it?" He said, "It's like having 30 employees, kind of like having four wives." I said, "Not even close, dude. Not even close." And it went on for there. He didn't realize he was opening up like a 10-minute sermon from now. And so he started it. And I told all my siblings when I first became a polygamist, I'm not going to mess with your kids' minds until they're adults.
Right,
And if they ask,
yeah,
we're going there.
Mhm.
right.
So he's in his mid 30s now, and he asked. So we went there, and he listened.
I just said no, nothing like it, because at least my 30 employees still listen to me when I talk, right? I mean,
We had spatterings of all that. Yeah.
right.
And it would be a lot different if you had to sleep with your employees.
Yeah,
yeah.
you can.
Right.
That would change the dynamics of everything.
Right.
How do you propose some kind of a contest to see who gets to win the prize this month? No, it ain't happening. Yeah.
No, but at least you can fire employees.
That's true.
So
Yeah. Whenever I hear someone saying, "Wow, it must just your society, it must just be really male dominated, huh?" I'm like, "That's cute. Say it again." 'Cause it's not that way. That's one of the things that we get a lot, right? I shouldn't even say just me, but Tanya and Amber, I know it's funny, even though they do their best to stay out of the way, inevitably, because of who I am, they get drug in the middle of it. Like they did a podcast once together, and you're right though. I mean that is the thing, and look, it's always a thing about the people that are most interested in is how does it work between the wives, right? The husbands, it's like we're just not interesting, right? Which I get. But it's really about how do the sisters make it work, and that's the part that everyone does.
I think even amongst polygamous families, people who are familiar with it, like it can be tricky, and we all kind of need help. Like when you get in a stuck spot, it's nice to say, okay, how did you guys figure this out? So
Mm.
it's not just for peeping toms, like it's for everybody to share the things that work and how do we make it work.
yeah.
And I think it can be beneficial no matter where the person's coming from. So
It's interesting. It's interesting, Dave. Even if you or I were to give our 2 cents in a situation like that, when the questions are generally coming from the female population, they're not going to believe us anyway.
Mm-mm.
Be-
No.
just because it's a man trying to
mansplain?
defend.
Mansplain, yes.
You know what I mean? It's a man trying to explain, yeah, or defend would be a better term. Um, this thing that everybody perceives that you control or you're
Yeah.
doing for ulterior motives. So they expect, because they don't know you personally, so they expect that you're going to lie to them. You
Hmm.
know, there's another video out there on the internet right now that we did um, we did a documentary for a company out of the UK, and we've done a reaction video that's also on our YouTube channel that folks can go look at. And that was kind of where the interviewer, she was really great, but she was having a hard time wrapping her mind around that, Jeff says this and that and the other. She enjoyed all of her conversations with the ladies, but in the end, it was, I could be here for a long time, and I don't know that I would ever really know if Jeff is doing this because this is a religious conviction, or he just wants his cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is important that the ladies, and they're the ones who have answered questions from the beginning, on Facebook, and they've done live chats, and that's part of this. We've also got a little tea and chat. They're going to do a weekly tea and chat where they answer questions, and I think it's going to be wildly successful because so many ladies around the world want to know from them, their side of the story.
Absolutely. It's the other interesting thing that happened today is, and I actually gave this guy, or I will give this guy the link to the Facebook or the YouTube channel. He's a Christian pastor who reached out to me just out of the blue, just hours before we're recording this here. We were on the phone for probably the better part of an hour and a half, and he had called me up and he said, "Hey, I bumped into your podcast," and I'm like, "Okay," and he's like, "I'm a Christian pastor," and I'm like, "Oh yeah?" He's like, "Yeah," and so I was like, "Okay, get the scriptures out because it's all hellfire and damnation for this point for me, right?" And I was getting ready to defend myself, and he's like, "I've done some research, and I think plural marriage is a true principle," and I'm like, "You are correct," and he's like, "I don't want to become a Mormon, but can you give me some insights on how to live this?" And I'm like, part of me wanted to be like, "No, but just record it for me because that first year you're going to love it, and it's going to be good entertainment." But we spent an hour and a half talking about, right, and a lot of the questions he was asking, I just kept saying the same thing over and over, which was, you're going to have to kind of find your own groove in this, right? Like, I have visited a lot of fundamentalist households. And I know it's hard for people to wrap their mind around, but every household is different, whether they're monogamous or polygamous, right? And they're all going to have different ways of doing things, and it's not better or worse necessarily. It's just different. And that's hard for people to wrap their minds around.
Yeah. No, it's just like people. Everyone has a different personality, and every family is going to look different. And it's interesting because growing up in Mormon culture and around fundamentalist Mormons, like that's the only version of polygamy I ever saw. But it's been interesting kind of stepping more out into the world and see that it's everywhere. So many different kinds of people live it. And we've been fortunate to get to hear some people's stories, and it is a true principle, and I think anybody who chooses to live it to the best of their ability is going to experience the blessings of that. And so I'm happy that we get a chance to talk about it and the beauties of it, because it is, and share it with people who are like, you know what, I think you're right, I think there's something here, and there is, and that's why it's part of my belief structure. Like it's why God calls me to do it, because it is, how do I say it, it brings beauty, it brings blessings, it's just, it's a really beautiful principle. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It truly, the natural consequences of polygamy, if everybody treats each other kindly, it's beautiful, and there are so many benefits that get completely overlooked when people are talking about polygamy and looking at it. And this idea that there's nothing in it for the women. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it is for women.
Mm-hmm.
And women are the people who truly benefit in this relationship. I was reading somebody's thoughts on this the other day. Actually, someone in our comment section, and I was really grateful for what they said. They were defending Jeff and this idea that, oh, he's only in it for the women. I'm sorry, marriage is hard. It's hard for a man to keep one woman happy. Jeff has to keep two women happy. That's hard. He's not in this for the women. And people, they overlook the fact that this is very difficult for men. And it can really be it's full of beautiful benefits for women. So
I hope it's okay, but I want to go down this road a little bit because I did have a listener reach out to me wanting perspectives of women here. So if you're okay with this, and Jeff, with your permission, of course, I would like to go down this road if you're good with that. Okay. All right. Well, I do.
Here, have a
No, Jeff can intervene. It's okay.
We're gonna do a fishing video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Dave and Jeff go to Bass Pro Shop.
Yes.
That's
there
right.
we go.
That's right.
Okay, so you talked about there's a lot of blessings in it for you. You know, a lot of blessings and opportunities and those sorts of things. What are they? Why would you guys choose this?
I love that question because it's been interesting. Sharis and I have been talking lately, and we've come to see that so many of the people who live this way, even in our culture, many of them have asked us, why would anybody do this if it wasn't a requirement? And I'm just kind of shocked. I'm like, you don't see the value in this besides God has commanded me, therefore I shall. It's like, there's so much in it for us. For one, I will say what it does is it opens the door for women to choose mates of the highest quality.
Yes.
It does not limit us to those who are available for the picked over selection of men who are maybe rejects for a reason. It allows you to pick somebody who you would like to be the father of your children. And perhaps another woman has chosen him and you can see the qualities and that's why he's desirable. And so it really is for mate selection on behalf of women, it's optimal.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you heard a woman say, well, all the good guys are taken? Well, if you're willing to live polygamy, that doesn't matter. The good guys are taken, and you can see that they're good guys because they've proven themselves. There's no guesswork involved.
Right.
So that's a huge benefit. Women by nature are just more social creatures. We need our feminine companionship, and polygamous women can have someone just built into their day to share their moments with and to have discussions with. And I have a friend that I go out with once a month, and we just go out, we get a coffee or something, we just hang out. And I love my friend, but I can't imagine if that was my only adult female interaction. If that's all I had time for, that would be so depressing, And so that's another benefit that polygamous women have.
Yeah, and there's also this element of the stabilizing factor. People talk about, oh, it's bad for kids, it's bad for families. And I'm like, okay. There was a point in my life where I got really sick and I was basically bedridden for a couple of months. And I was able to kind of look at my kids and realize I can't be there for them in the way that I normally am, but they're still home, still being cared for by their family, by another mother figure who they're familiar with, comfortable with. My husband can still go to work. He doesn't have to stay home and take care of me. Sharis was helping me do my laundry and watch the kids and do the dishes. And she didn't have to step away from her family to do that service. It was built in. And so, when one of us has something that comes up that would normally just throw a family for a loop, like we were able to keep going because it's like we've got each other's back. And the kids never had to go get babysat at grandma's because dad's got to work and mom can't watch them. And so, it's so stabilizing for the kids to have that built into their home. So there's lots. And it saddens me that when people can't see the goodness in it. So
yeah. As a homeschooling mom, Vanessa has talents and skills that I just don't have. But now my children have access to someone who can teach them these things that I don't have. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be good at everything. And my kids have access to so much more than just what I could provide them on my own.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I gonna illustrate a story here. I'm gonna throw myself under the bus. When we had our second grandchild, our daughter was living in a different state, about halfway across the country. And at this time, we weren't living plural marriage. And Amber's like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to head over there. But it was right in the middle of COVID, right? And so we're like, okay, just it's early, but get down there because if you get sick, it's not going to matter. So just get there, right? And just be there. So Amber went and she left me, the two youngest at home, and then my middle daughter, who was at that time just starting college. And I didn't think anything of it, but all I'd been eating is steak and eggs, right? So um she my daughter opened up the refrigerator and actually took a picture and sent it to her mother, right? And I didn't, and it looked better than what it did on the picture, in my opinion. But in the picture, you could only see like 0 calorie Gatorade, steak, eggs, and some like leftover takeout Chinese food, right? And my wife calls me and she's like, "You savage, you need to stop. You need to get real food." I'm like, "Steak and eggs is real food. I don't know what the problem is." And but again, because look, I don't know how to cook, right? I mean, I can grill, I can smoke meat, but I mean, honestly, if I have to like boil a pot of water, that bad boy's getting burnt. I don't know what else to tell everybody. It's just the way it is. And so this last time, same daughter had a baby, and this this time I'm living the principle. And Amber and I were talking about it, and she's like, "Can I just say, it's going to be so nice for me to be able to go and know that Tanya's there to look after you because you're just not capable, honey. You're going to do things that are detrimental." And it was. I'm not going to lie. I had to call maids in to clean the house because there was like gun oil all over the table and protein powder and everything else. But no, it does, right? There is a stabilizing factor, and even with the kids, right? I remember we had to go, the same daughter that threw me under the bus, we had to go pick her up from school one day. And I went and picked her up, and I was like literally 5 minutes late was all, right? If 5 minutes. And I went and I picked her up, and I said, "Hey, sorry I'm late. I didn't mean to." And this was right after Tanya came into the family. And she just looked at me. She's like, "Tanya wouldn't have been late." Right? I'm like, "Oh, that's rough." But that is the truth of it, right? And it's so hard to explain to somebody. It's almost something you have to experience, right? Like I've often thought, gosh, I wish you could just see my house or somebody else's house, how it functions for a little while. This might answer some questions. Do you find yourself missing having conversations with people who believe as you do? Maybe because you live in an area where there's not a whole lot of Orthodox Mormons running around? Or maybe you're an active member of the LDS Church, or maybe even an Ever Mormon, but you're really curious about what the faith teaches. Well, I have something here for you today that you might like. Now, every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central, Taylor Smith teaches a class on gospel fundamentals from a very orthodox point of view. He will cover everything from the nature of God to some of the deeper doctrines of the faith. Now, to join the class, all you got to do is click the link in this episode's show notes and on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central and join the class. It's an easy place where you can be as open or private as you want. It's all up to you. Again, all you got to do is on Thursday night, hit that link in this episode's show notes, and you can log on to the Gospel Fundamentals class taught by Taylor Smith. Thanks, and I hope to see you there.
I have a story for you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, okay, I'll go really fast. I went to this little group meeting at the park full of homeschooling moms one time, and while the kids played, all the moms sat in a circle, and they were bouncing ideas off each other. And the main one that seemed to be predominant was, how do you balance cooking, laundry, and homeschooling? How do you do it with older kids, with younger kids? And they were all shooting off these ideas, and well, here's what I do. This worked for a while. And it got to me, and I was just sitting there. I was like, have any of you tried having a sister wife? It kind of makes things easier if there's two of you. I'm just saying. So
Was there like, because I'm a fan of awkward silence. Was it like awkwardly silent for a good couple seconds?
all the ladies there knew who we were. And it was just kind of like, okay, pick up on the next lady, And I was like, she has no information that can actually help us because I was not in the same situation as they were. So she's like, moving on. So
20, 25 years ago, I was still very active in the church, but considering exploring and reading about church history. And a good friend of mine was a lady who was teaching gospel doctrine in the church. And she and I used to have deep conversations. And so that was not a big deal. And she came to me after church once and she'd taught a lesson and she was saying, "Oh, I found this really interesting story that we talked about today, and I want to share it with you." So I said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, I was reading a study that there were two groups. They were professional psychologists who studied people, and what they realized was in the middle of their different groups, and they would have a break, that the people who were having a break from being studied would go and all the women would gather together and the men would go out and be alone. And they thought, why don't we study that next time? So they did a study on the needs of women in there to have other female companionship and the need that is real. And after she was done talking about all the things that they came up with, and I can't remember them all, she said, I just realized how amazing it is that God created the Relief Society.
so close.
And I said, or maybe polygamy.
Right?
Of course, we were in the church at this time, and she looked at me and she just went, "You ruin everything," and kind of and walked away. But she knew exactly what I was talking about. The Relief Society basically is wonderful.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's nothing compared to the fullness,
Right.
of having a family.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm just saying that, and it was a funny.
I bet you it was.
Exactly what I was talking about once it hit her, and she just kind of had to walk away because there was nothing else to say.
No, there's nothing. You can't say anything at that point, right?
Yeah.
It's all done.
Yeah.
You mentioned the kids and stabilizing the home. It doesn't take long for the kids to feel that, right? Now, if it's their kids raised in the principle and there's nothing to contrast, they're not going to pick up on it quite as much until they have families of their own. But even my middle boy, who's living at home right now, I had to go Christmas shopping, and it's like, "You want to go? I'll buy you a burger." He's like, "Yeah, I'll go with you." Right? So we hop in the truck and we head into town and we do Christmas shopping. And I was looking at some jewelry, and there was another gentleman there who was looking at jewelry as well. And I was like, "What do you think about this one for your mom, son?" And he's like, "Well, Dad, if you spend that much on one, you're gonna have to spend that much on Tanya too." And I was like, "No, you're right." And this guy looks up at me and he locks eyes and he starts smiling and laughing like it's a joke. And Jacob just looks up at me and goes, "What?" Right? Like, it was pretty funny. Just totally, again, awkward, and I find that extremely humorous. But it was awesome to see him kind of like, I probably won't ever do it, but it works for him, so back off. Um, so, um, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question. If you don't want to go there, that's okay, because I don't want to stir anything up. But I asked about the blessings. What are some of the challenges you face as a woman living this way?
Well, there's the jealousy issue. That's real. I have never met a single person who's not actually has elements of jealousy. When they say, I'm not a jealous person. And then they get married, and every single time without fail, they have their struggles. They just didn't realize that they would experience them that like they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real thing. So the thing about this lifestyle is that it brings to the surface the things that need to be addressed. And so it is a perfecting principle. That's why we do it. So yeah, you've got other people looking at you and pointing out your flaws. That's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you work on them, then you overcome them. There is the logistical elements of if you're sharing a house, who cleans? Who's responsible? What if one person's cleaner than the other? Whose standards do you have to live up to? Who does the cooking? What if you have difference in ideas about diet? What about disciplining each other's children or not? There's challenges that come with that. I mean, they're numerous, but it's worth working through.
Yeah. I think it can be easy for some women to fall into this trap of the sister wife is competition, competition for their husband's love, for their husband's time. And if you have personal insecurities where your relationship with your husband is concerned, then it can be a real struggle because every other woman is a threat. And so, but then it comes right back around to what Vanessa was saying. If you're able to address what the real issues are and commit to becoming the best possible version of yourself, then all of the struggles and challenges, there's a way through them. You can overcome them.
Mhm. Interesting.
So I guess the biggest challenge is crap. We have to be better people. That's
Right. Jeff, how about you? Right? We talked about the challenges that the sisters face here. What about you as a man? What challenges do you face in living this way?
you can talk freely. It's okay.
Well, just like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Right.
All out right there. This is what we do every day. Every day. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Sorry, kind of.
yeah. Part of my discussion about the 30 employees and they're not your wives and different things, kind of went to the reality that when you enter into a plural marriage, where you're it changes the way it should change the way you behave in a positive manner. It's the man's version of what the ladies were just explaining. You now have to make all of your decisions and how you respond, how you live, how you act, where you stand, what you say, what you don't. It has to be calculated from what's the right thing to do. As monogamists, a lot of compromise and give and take to make a male female relationship work.
Hmm.
But in plural marriage, it changes the dynamics a little bit. And as a man, you had better be working on how, what to do that's the right thing, even if it makes everybody mad.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Or it'll play you. It'll ruin you. So that's
I yeah, from my aspect, there are things about myself. And look, I think we're all this way. I think it's part of the human condition, right? Sometimes we don't see our own crap, right? I hate to put it that way, but it's just the truth, right? And so when Amber and Tanya come to me and they're like, look, you got this issue, and there's two people telling me this, I'm like, well, hold on a second. Oh, man, they might be right, right? And that forces you to kind of look at things. And to your point, Jeff, I think that's 100% correct. There is no room for just knee-jerk reactions now, right? I mean, and that's a good thing, right? If part of this is to prepare us for godhood, we would detest a God who had knee-jerk reactions like that, right? Because it would be wrath all the time. Because we deserve it. I deserve it, right? And so it really it forces us as men to be like, there's no knee-jerk reactions, right? We're gonna have them anyway, but it in some ways it's made me think about what I say a lot more before I say it, right? At least inside my family, because you got to. That's the only way that this works, and I think it does that in all parties involved. And I think that it does make people better for it.
I think that there's, especially being in the fundamentalist world, the LDS Mormon fundamentalism. It's very openly discussed that this is a principle that will make you better if you live it and if you try. So you enter in with a theological understanding that this is going to be tough, but there's blessings involved, and it will show you your faults. Whereas I think there's a lot of folks out there in the world that, the ladies answer questions all the time about, do you do this for religious reasons? What's and how is it different? How's Mormon polygamy different than any other type of polygamy? And I think that the focus on the religious side of things has its pros and its cons, because it's a principle that a human can figure out. People around the world um, figure things out through their experience, which is the whole purpose for this earth life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of God's children down here figuring things out through experience. And if they work hard enough at it, and if their hearts are true, I think Sharis mentioned this earlier, they're going to come across these very same things that we're talking about, that have been taught for generations by the founding members of Mormonism, to help us along the way. We kind of go into it with a little bit of a code book, or a lot of a code book
Mm-hmm.
that will help us. And it's an open book test. I hate to be bumbling my way through, just like your friend who called you today and said, "Hey, how do I do this?" Right? He's
Right.
recognizing some things, and he's gonna experience the same kind of things. And if he makes it through, it'll be because the principal taught him truth of how to behave as a husband if he wants to maintain a family. And that's a process.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. But despite the challenges, the blessings are just so overwhelmingly in favor, right? I mean,
yep, I would agree.
and look, everybody says, well, that would be hard. Well, look, monogamy is hard, right? I mean,
Yes.
and I get that people say, well, what about these scenes of abuse I have witnessed down in southern Utah and northern Arizona. And I'm like, look, there are crappy plural families and there are crappy monogamous families. And that's just all there is to it, right? People are people, no matter what their situation is. And look, there was, Brigham did put down a pretty stern warning to the fellas, right? This'll damn more men than it'll save. And I don't want to discourage anybody, but certainly go in understanding that, yeah, that it's going to take some work, but the payoff is beautiful.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as you go forward with the channel here, you talked about like a they're going to get an in-depth view of your family, right? So what does that look like? Is that, showing you do homeschooling and you taking care of the house, and Jeff, you are outside doing handstands on wood like that other one? I mean, is that what we're rolling for?
That was to subtly attract more women.
Oh, that's what that is.
We'll have to see if it works.
Yeah.
Right.
It is, you throw it out there, see what works.
Right.
But
Well, yeah.
no.
Yeah,
Oh,
I do think that that's going to be a large element of it, is showing the functioning of our family.
yeah, I think we also have a great part of our whole drive for years, for me, for the last 30 years of my life, has been to try to figure out how to live more self-sufficient, and how to raise our own food and all those kinds of things. I've been successful, not successful, as I work my way through that. So we're going to show a lot of that. We're here on 20 acres, and we have a lot of our food that we're working with, and I have a lot of projects that we're going to do. And I think there's a lot of people in the world. You and I have talked about this on past podcasts, Dave. The need to be more in control of life,
Yeah.
as individuals, as groups, as communities, and especially where our food's concerned. And so we're going to show a lot of that, and some of it will be our learning curve, and our mistakes, and what works and what doesn't work. And so I'm sure that a lot of the stuff, this we're getting ready to put a video out about just a how-to video on a little tree that I carved for Chloe, and it'll be fun, and maybe a few people will enjoy it. Maybe a lot will enjoy it. I don't know. um, this lifestyle calls to a lot of people, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of folks out there in the world who want the courage and want to see what other people have done. And then I think they'll pull the trigger because our world's in a place of hurt, and living in the city is a big a hard thing to get out of. But there are some beautiful things to living rurally that are calling to people. And so we want to show that as much as we do the lifestyle of our family and our children and the benefits of both of those things put together. To me, it's what you could call the old paths. It's the path that the Lord has pretty much encouraged very heavily from the very beginning. Is don't gather together in a city where you don't have the ability to make your own food. That puts you as a slave.
Yeah,
Now
you're
you're a slave.
dependent upon the government or
And
others, and
yeah,
you don't have the freedom to follow
to
God.
even choose your path.
Yeah.
If you don't have, the ability to take care of your own
Provide your needs.
temporal needs, you're a slave to this world. And so there's that. And so we want to show a lot of those kind of things. We want to be able to show the fun stuff that we do with the kids, some adventure videos and things like that. And the ladies are doing all sorts of, it'll be a well-rounded experience, and people can come and watch whatever they want, not watch what they don't want, you know.
Some people like watching it and they get so mad and they can't stop watching it.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah, that's true.
Hate watching is a thing. I have several people who do that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and they let me know. Yeah, no, hate watching is a thing for sure. You brought up the part about being out of the cities and stuff, and this just doesn't tie into homesteading. I think it ties into our way of life in general. I think COVID showed the weakness of this idea of living in like massive cities, right? Um, I remember, gosh, it's been a while since I've thought about this. I remember when the pandemic first started, right? Now, again, me and my boys, because we're meatheads, the first thing we did is we found every like pandemic movie, and then we just watched them one after another, and it was one of those things like the first one to tap was the biggest wuss of the house, right? So I mean, we're going through them all, but it was the night before the actual lockdown was supposed to take effect. And I looked at my oldest boy who came home to live with us because his job just shut down, and I had a downstairs apartment that was finished, and I was like, no, 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 don't quit school, just come live with us, right? And so him and his wife and his daughter came to live with us, and one night we're up, and it's about 11:30 at night, and I just got this weird prompting: go to the grocery store. I'm like, I don't need to go to the grocery store. I got everything I need right here. This is the whole reason we've been preparing for so long. I got a whole downstairs full of food. Fine on toilet paper, right? I don't know what everyone else's problem is. Not that I had anything to do with that. That was all Amber. But anyway, so it was kind of a weird thing, right? And I thought, okay, let's go look. And so me and my boy, we took a trip and we just ran down to the grocery store. He's like, do we need to get something? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, what are we doing here? I'm like, I don't know. Let's just go in and take a look. And the panic that I saw was heartbreaking, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm living in Utah County, right? Like, panic should be the last place Utah should be the last place you expect to see panic, right? But that wasn't the case. Um, the shelves were just bare. And as they would wheel out a pallet of food, people would just go nuts and just charge that thing, right? And the line stretched. You guys are familiar with the store Winco, right? Were you still okay? Big stores, right? Warehouse kind of stores.
Yeah.
The lines wrapped all the way back along the bakery, all the way back to the dairy section of people just trying to check out. 11:30 at night, and it was heartbreaking, right? It was one of those things where the fear was palpable. But I remember thinking in that moment, this is unsustainable, right? It's just unsustainable. It's worked okay to this point because we haven't had one of these black swan events, right? We haven't had a pandemic. We haven't had a major homeland attack, anything like that. But when that supply chain goes down, those cities are absolutely unsustainable.
Yeah.
And I I remember thinking, yeah, no, this is what I was supposed to see, is this right here. And there are so many people now that are actually looking at getting out of the city for the first time in a long time as a viable option, right?
Yep.
And
True.
and I think showing that part of your guys' life is going to be huge to a lot of people. And look, I think for so long our society's just been built on fake things, right? Social media is fake, it's curated, right? The Facebooks, the Twitter, that sort of thing. And people have a nose for authenticity, right? If you're authentic, that stuff always resonates. So I think given that you guys are so authentic and so open, I think it's going to do wonders for people being able to see this put into practice, both the lifestyle as well as living out of the cities.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
It's a
yeah.
good thing. And if we can even give hope, you know,
Mhm.
to people about family life and living out of the city, we've accomplished what we set out to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's the other great thing about the channel is certainly the lifestyle between, as fundamentalist Mormons is going to be a huge part in that. Even those who don't want to engage in the principle, I think will be able to take something away in at
Mhm.
least looking at that and getting some ideas and like, well, Jeff did it this way. I think I could do it that way and get it done.
Yeah.
So it'll be good stuff.
It was real interesting. We had we had a lot of people, when we did the show before. A lot of people we worked with after at the end of the season would reach out, before they left the crew, and just we had one young man who had a couple kids who just thanked us and said, I've watching your family has changed my life,
Mm,
and um, I I vowed to be a better father, you know, and
that's
he didn't.
awesome.
Yeah. And so we've had really, really neat experiences. One of the other gentlemen, I think it was Alejandro was talking to you. Was it, was it you?
I don't know the story.
Anyway, he basically said that he almost didn't want to take the job because it was a polygamist family, you know.
Yeah.
But afterwards, basically, he didn't say it changed his life in that way, but he tearfully thanked us because it changed the way he felt
Mhm.
and thought. And the kids were all hanging around, wanting him to teach him how to use the cameras and all that kind of stuff. And so it impacted him once they could be in our home for a season.
Yeah.
And so we found that the same kind of thing exists with people who watch on TV and they find a family or an experience that, like you said, that's real. It changes the way they think because now they don't just think of what they have seen that's negative. They have something to contrast it that, oh, there are people who live this way that I think are good. And so it's an interesting thing.
Absolutely.
For all the scariness that being in the public eye entails, those are the kind of moments that make me realize this is worth it, because if we can share insight and truth and God's love with any one of these people, it's worthwhile. And that's only the people that we know about. And there's numerous stories that we haven't even mentioned. And that's not even including the ones that we don't know, the ones that
Yeah.
don't give us feedback. And so, if we get the opportunity to share this, then it feels like a calling.
Yeah.
Not everybody's in the position to do what we're doing. And that's fine. But we are. And so, we're happy to step forward and do what we can. And if it can make if it can help people either through encouraging them to take a step on their own to improve themselves, or give them an idea of how they can become more dependent on God and less on the government or whatever, then we'll all be uplifted through that process. The more of us who can do that, and it spreads throughout the community and throughout the world. So, we all do our part to share the gospel basically in this way or that, and it's always worthwhile.
Yeah. I what you said there is hugely important, right? It's easy to demonize another group of people if you don't ever spend time talking to them,
Mhm.
right? And I remember one thing that happened to us. It was when we came out here to Missouri for a visit, right? Scout it out, so to speak. And we decided we were going to take a trip up through Nauvoo, right? We're like, well, I'm there. I might as well go over there. And so we did. And so it was me, Amber, and Tanya. And um, the girls were like, okay, what is it you really want to see? I was like, I want to see the gun shop and I want to see John Taylor's home. But John Taylor's home has to be first. Because I mean that's a place where like they planned the Exodus, right? The 12 would meet there. They would plan the Exodus. They would go over plans. So I was like, I want to see that. And so I go in and I sit down, and it's not a very busy day at all there. It's like right smack dab in the middle of the week. Um, it was warm definitely, but it just wasn't very busy. And so I'm just kind of taking it all in, right? I'm sitting in John Taylor's home, and all of a sudden, this older missionary couple comes in, and they got this other couple with them, who's not Mormon at all, right? And the lady's like, this is John Taylor's home. And she kind of, just reads a few things. And the guy goes, who is John Taylor? And the lady, she tries to answer a little bit. And she looks at me and she's like, do you have something you'd like to add to that? And I'm like, sure. And I just basically tell all the stuff I know. And about three-quarters of the way given my spiel, I'm like, I think I messed up. I think I overshared and I shouldn't have, right? I think I should have let this lady do her calling. And so after they left, I just kind of said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry if I stepped on that. I did not mean to. And she's like, no, no, no. I'm glad you did. And she's like, you've read a little bit, haven't you? And I was like, yes, yes, ma'am, I have. And Tanya and Amber had started walking up the road, and she's like, which one of those women are your wife? And I was just like, yes. And she sat there and the wheels turned for a minute, and then you could almost see the light bulb go off. And she's like, oh, you're a fundamentalist. And I'm like, here's the part where I get kicked out, right? That was my first thought. But she sat there and we had probably, her and her husband and myself had probably a half-hour conversation just outside the John Taylor home. And I remember she said, you know what? She said, you can never tell anyone my name, and definitely don't tell them my name with what I'm going to tell you. She said, but I just want you to know I'd have no problem sitting next to you guys in the temple, right? I mean, and so often this thing where we other people, right? We make them the other. Um, that can only happen in the vacuum where there's not conversation happening, right? I think when you sit down and you have to look another person in the eye and say, um, tell me about yourself, something happens there, and you start to view them as a person, maybe different from you in a lot of ways, but a person nonetheless. And I think that does a lot of good. What's that?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's just humility.
Yeah.
Get to the point where we realize that somebody else, that we don't know everything. Somebody else might know something that we don't know. And so we sit down, we have a conversation, we open ourselves up to this reality that we don't know everything, that maybe we could learn something. And that's just humility. And there's a reason why, God requires it. And so we don't get stuck in this, all the other people. There's me and then all the other people. So no, I think conversation's good.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and look, it won't. You guys are even going to do something where you're going to have an episode like every week. Is that what you said, where people can jump on and ask questions?
Yeah, Sharis and I weekly, we just have a chat, whether we're answering questions that people have posed to us or thoughts that we've been thinking about. So yeah, we welcome the questions because it's fun to discuss the things and to share insights and to give perspective.
Yeah.
I don't think they're planning right away to do live streams.
Not quite
Okay.
yet.
They
No.
they will do some, but that's just a big undertaking with
It's in the
Yeah.
future.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So how long do you see these episodes lasting? I mean, how time frame wise?
They're all different. It depends on what we're doing. Sometimes they're short. Some of our conversations are longer. They range anywhere from a couple minutes to half hour.
Yeah,
Yeah, the one that's on the channel right now was what, 27 minutes?
something like that.
And then this morning you guys filmed a new one that's what, 15, 12, 15?
Yeah, right
17.
in there. So it's just a range.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what we're talking about.
Gotcha. And how about a release schedule? Are you guys going to do it weekly, monthly? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah. Our schedule so far is we're releasing a couple videos per week.
Okay.
So yeah, different styles. So Sharis and I do tea and chat once a week, and then we release a couple of other different videos. And so,
Assuming we're not having technical problems.
Which we are currently having.
Yeah, that's,
It happens.
sure we have that. So,
You'll get the hang of it. Trust me. I struggled with it, and you guys will figure it out. I have no doubts about that. As you've started this now, and this is something you're engaged in, as you've started the process, what's one thing what's one challenge that you didn't foresee happening?
I think, we knew it was going to take time, but, as we try to learn all the programs
Mhm.
and setups and all these different things, it's taking a lot longer than I think we imagined it would. But I know that that's just something we have to experience in the beginning as we figure things out. And that we'll figure out, schedules and how to streamline things. But at the moment, that's
technological
the
learning
time
curve.
it takes. The time it takes is like, okay, then here we go. So
Gotcha. Now that you guys have started this, you're underway. What's your hopes for it? What do you hope this does? This channel.
Who wants to take that one?
You just asked the same question in a different manner. That's no fair to me.
Sorry, it's almost like an old podcaster's trick.
I know, and then you'll throw out the bad and keep the good one. Let's see. I think our hope is to be able to answer some questions, to share the beauties of this lifestyle, plural families. Everybody knows who we are. I mean, most of them. And to be able to share the beauty of rural living. That's kind of the hope is.
And honestly, to be able to be a voice that sets the record straight as far as misunderstandings and stereotypes. Yeah, because there's a lot that's misunderstood. And so have the conversations. If we share, then those things start to go away, and that's great. I would love for that to be the case.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, most people think that polygamy is just kind of like for an old guy and a couple of young girls. I mean,
no idea where they get that idea.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I hear you. No, it's always a bit disconcerting to me. Tanya's 10 years younger than I am. And it's always a bit concerning to me when she starts talking about shows she used to watch as a kid. And I realized that my oldest kids also watch that same show. And I'm like, oh, I'm old. It's happened somewhere, somehow it has happened.
It's keeping you spry. It's good. It works for your good.
Yeah. Yep. All awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Is there anything you guys want to talk about we haven't covered? Anything about the channel or anything else?
No, I think we've covered most of it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Jeff, any parting words of wisdom or wit or anything like that?
I'm all witted out.
Oh,
You're all witted out. Catch you in the morning is what you're saying. Awesome.
Right.
All right. Well, guys, this is going to be good.
Plan that fishing trip. We do have to plan that fishing trip, but
we do
here. So
we do. We're going to have to plan that fishing trip for sure. It's overdue. I need to go fishing. So, well, guys, it's awesome. I think you guys are going to do great. I can't wait for it. It's out. Everybody check out the link. I'll post that in the show notes. Everybody check that out for sure. You guys, Aldridges, it's always good to talk to you.
Always good to
Great
talk to
to
you.
talk with you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Dan.
You bet. Stick around for just 5 minutes. Bye, everybody.